There are absences in time, moments when history itself seems to draw a breath and go still. You can feel it sometimes, that quiet dissonance humming beneath the surface of the world. The museums tell one story, carved neatly in timelines and glass. But the stones tell another, the stones whisper. They remember, hey there friend, tonight we're going to listen to those whispers together. Welcome to Candlelit History. I'm glad you're here. Before we begin, take a moment to get comfortable, maybe dim the lights, or light a small candle if you have one. Let your phone rest on the nightstand. Let the day loosen its grip. If there's a fan nearby, turn it on low. That steady hum will be our companion tonight. As you settle in, I'll ask what I always do. Where are you listening from? And what time is it there? Are you lying in a quiet apartment somewhere in the city, the streetlights glowing through the curtains? Or maybe you're out in the countryside, where the crickets are the only clocks still working. Wherever you are, this story is for you. And if this kind of calm history helps you rest, if it lets your mind wander into strange, forgotten corners of the past, feel free to subscribe, only if it feels right. Now, let's begin. You wake in the middle of a desert night. The air is cool and dry, and the sand beneath your boots shivers faintly as the wind passes over it. Ahead, the silhouettes of tents ripple like ghosts against the horizon. Somewhere, a generator hums, a light flickers, and an archaeologist's brush moves across the skin of the earth. You step closer. Each grain of sand brushed aside reveals another century. A chipped pot, a staircase descending into soil, the edge of a stone circle that shouldn't exist here, not in this layer of time. The team's lead researcher looks up from her notes. Her voice is calm, but you can hear the disbelief hiding under it. It's older than it should be, she says. Thousands of years older. It's a phrase you'll hear again and again as this journey unfolds. Older than it should be. In the pale light of dawn, the site stretches before you like a wound in the desert, a spiral of carved limestone rising from beneath layers of earth. The scent of dust and stone fills the air, ancient yet strangely familiar. Someone hands you a brush, and you kneel beside a pillar half buried in sand. Its surface is carved with foxes, cranes, and symbols that feel more like constellations than letters. The guide whispers the name, Göbekli Tepe, 11,000 years old, maybe more, built long before cities, before metal, before the wheel. Its creators were supposed to be hunter-gatherers, yet they raised monoliths 20 feet high and aligned them to the stars. The textbooks call it a mystery. The wind calls it memory. As the sun rises, the stones cast long shadows across the plateau. They look like clock hands marking an hour. No one remembers. You run your fingers across the carvings, cool, deliberate, impossibly precise. Who built this? And why, after building something so monumental, did they bury it so carefully, as if hiding a secret from time itself? That question, the one echoing beneath every forgotten ruin, is what tonight's story will chase. Across deserts and oceans, through floods and fire, we'll follow the faint footprints of civilizations that shouldn't exist. From Anatolia's buried temples to Egypt's rain-scoured Sphinx, from drowned cities beneath the Indian Ocean to ice-bound coastlines mapped before they were discovered. Each place hums with the same quiet defiance, proof that the story we tell about our past may only be the surface of something deeper. There's a strange comfort in that thought, isn't there? The idea that we are not the beginning, that there were others before us who dreamed, built, measured the stars, and then vanished, leaving only the faint pulse beneath the soil. As you listen, you might imagine the rhythm of your own heartbeat syncing with that deeper pulse. The earth itself breathing, remembering, each exhale erasing an empire, each inhale preparing another. The archaeologists often say that discovery is just organized patience, but what they rarely admit is that patience begins to feel like prayer. Every brushstroke over stone is an act of faith that what lies beneath has something to say, if only we listen slowly enough. When night falls again, the dig site goes quiet. A single lantern flickers beside the unearthed pillars. You sit nearby, notebook open, watching the shadows move like ancient hands across the carvings. The silence grows heavy, not empty, but full, as if the earth is thinking. Somewhere in that silence, you sense it, a pattern, a timeline that folds instead of stretching straight. Civilizations that rise, fall, and return like tides. The buried and the remembered trading places, again and again, and perhaps that is what this story truly is. Not a search for what we lost, but for what we keep rediscovering. Knowledge that refuses to die, only to sleep. Far in the distance, thunder mutters over the horizon. The desert smells faintly of rain. You close your notebook, tuck the brush into the sand, and look once more at the great stone ring gleaming under the moon. It feels alive, somehow, not ancient, but awake. Tonight we begin not with kings or empires, but with that feeling, the quiet awareness that our world rests upon forgotten worlds. So lie back, breathe, and let the story unfold. We're going to travel across the buried chapters of our own history, through the deserts, the oceans, the ice, and the myths that remember what we have forgotten. Because somewhere beneath the dust and the doctrine, beneath the carbon dates and the skepticism, there is still a pulse, steady, patient, unbroken, and it has been waiting for a very long time. The morning begins with the sound of wind moving through canvas, that hollow flutter that makes every tent feel like it's breathing. The desert is still pale and half asleep. The archaeologists move quietly, their boots sinking into soft sand, their voices hushed, as if they're afraid to wake something ancient. You follow them to the edge of the excavation pit. From above, the site looks like a spiral cut into the earth. Stone circles nested inside one another, each older than the one above it. The deeper the team digs, the stranger it becomes. The stones at the bottom are smoother, more deliberate, as though the builders began with perfection and ended with memory. A kettle whistles somewhere in the distance. Someone pours coffee into chipped enamel cups. It smells like dust and burnt sugar. One of the younger researchers, eyes still rimmed with sleep, jokes that the place feels less like a dig site and more like an open grave for time itself. Everyone laughs softly, but no one disagrees. When the sun rises, it catches on the tops of the limestone pillars. The carvings glow as if backlit. Foxes, vultures, snakes, and strange abstract symbols that seem both animal and celestial. A thin line of light runs through the site, perfectly aligned with the horizon. It's an axis of precision that no one expected from a people who, according to every textbook, shouldn't have known geometry, astronomy, or even masonry. Göbekli Tepe, the name translates to Potbelly Hill, an unassuming name for what might be the oldest temple in the world, 11,500 years old, built before metal, before cities, before the idea of civilization itself. But what makes it even stranger is that it wasn't destroyed by time or war. It was deliberately buried, entombed beneath thousands of tons of earth, as if its makers wanted it hidden from future eyes. Scientists still don't know why. Was it protection, ritual, or a final act of farewell from a people who knew something the rest of humanity would soon forget? Klaus Schmidt, the German archaeologist who unearthed it in the 1990s, once said, "This changes everything." He believed it reversed the story of civilization, that religion, art, and community came not from farming, but perhaps the other way around. Maybe people didn't build temples because they had crops. Maybe they began to farm because they had temples to feed. You imagine it now, thousands of years before the first city walls, a gathering of people on this Anatolian hill, carving their beliefs into stone. The night fires flicker against monoliths that reach toward constellations we still recognize. The air hums with music, with meaning, and then silence. Somewhere in the layers above this site, millennia later, come traces of other settlements, other lives, pottery shards from early farmers, then tools from metalworkers, then far above, the scattered debris of modernity, a coin, a bullet casing, a fragment of glass. Time has stacked itself like sediment, one civilization dissolving into the next. You step carefully around a trench where a graduate student is brushing the edge of another pillar. Her hands tremble slightly, not from fatigue, but from awe. Every time we go deeper, she says, it's like the story rearranges itself. You look down and see what she means. The deeper layers don't look primitive. They look purposeful, advanced in thought, if not in technology. It's as if progress isn't a straight line but a circle, an amnesia that resets every few thousand years. In that moment, the desert feels less like a place and more like a memory palace. Each grain of sand, a page from a story we forgot to read. By noon, the heat has settled in. The horizon shimmers, bending light into liquid. The excavation slows to a crawl. You retreat to the shade of the supply tent, sipping water that tastes faintly of tin. From here, you can see the entire site. The circles, the trenches, the fragments of forgotten artistry, rising like a mirage. It's strange, you think, how humanity seems haunted by its own beginnings. Every age believes it's the first to awaken, yet everywhere we dig, we find echoes of someone who came before, someone who looked at the stars and saw meaning, who shaped the earth into symbols, who built not to survive, but to remember. A sound interrupts your thoughts, the sharp crack of a tool striking something hollow. The workers gather, and you walk back to the pit. The team has uncovered a new section, a narrow stairway descending into untouched soil. The walls are lined with polished stone, smoother than anything above it. The air changes as you step down, cooler, heavier, carrying a faint mineral scent. You run your hand along the wall, feeling the precision of its surface. No tool marks, no rough edges, just perfect, silent craftsmanship. At the bottom of the stairway lies a small chamber, barely large enough for 3 people to stand. In its center rests a single slab, circular, engraved with an intricate spiral that seems to pull the eye inward. The archaeologists photograph it from every angle, debating whether it's ceremonial, astronomical, or something else entirely. But you're not listening to their theories anymore. You're staring at the spiral, tracing it with your gaze. It feels almost hypnotic, like a pattern you've seen before, though you can't say where. Maybe in a dream, or on a map, or in the curve of a fossil shell. It feels less like decoration, and more like a memory encoded in stone. Later that night, when the team retires to their tents, you remain awake. The desert cools quickly, and the stars unfold in slow procession across the sky. You glance at your notes, the layers, the spirals, the buried sanctuaries, and a quiet realization begins to form. This is not an anomaly, this is a prelude. Because thousands of miles away, in Egypt, another monument watches the stars, a monument whose erosion tells a story far older than the civilization that claimed it. The Sphinx, its face half eroded, its flanks scarred not by desert winds, but by rain. Rain that last fell on the Nile Valley, more than 10,000 years ago. You close your notebook and look out over the sand, now silver under moonlight. The pillars of Göbekli Tepe cast long shadows like sundials measuring an invisible hour. Somewhere beneath those shadows, beneath the carved foxes and cranes, lies the memory of a world before history began. And tonight, the desert feels like it's listening. When you finally lie down, the wind carries the faintest sound through the camp, not the rattle of canvas or the whisper of sand, but something else, something rhythmic, like footsteps beneath the ground. Tomorrow, the team will move on. The site will rest again, its secrets half buried, half told. But before sleep claims you, you feel the question rise once more. The same one that's followed every civilization into the dust. If this was only the beginning, what else have we buried? The flight from Anatolia to Egypt feels like drifting through time itself. The desert changes color below, ochre to gold, then to the bleached white of limestone. From above, the landscape looks timeless. Dunes moving like slow rivers, mountains eroded to memory. But beneath those sands lies the next chapter of the world's most persistent enigma, a monument that refuses to fit inside its own timeline. You land at dawn, when the horizon over Cairo glows like brass. The city hums faintly in the distance, a civilization of glass and exhaust built atop the bones of another. By the time you reach the Giza Plateau, the air tastes like dust and heat. And there she is, the Sphinx, half lion, half human, entirely impossible. Her eroded face gazes eastward toward the rising sun, patient as eternity. Every photograph you've ever seen of her feels flat compared to this moment. She isn't just old, she feels ancient in a way that defies scale, as if she's been watching not centuries but cycles. You walk closer. The ground trembles faintly under the rumble of tourist buses, but the Sphinx remains unmoved, vast, silent, inscrutable. Her eyes are worn smooth, her body scarred by time, and something older than time. You notice the flanks first, deep vertical channels carved into the limestone, running from top to bottom like melted wax. They aren't the work of wind. Wind leaves horizontal abrasion, fine as sandpaper. These scars are from water, heavy, consistent rain. But there's a problem. Rain like that hasn't fallen on this plateau for over 10,000 years. That single observation changes everything. In the early 1990s, geologist Robert Schoch examined these same walls and concluded that the Sphinx might predate the pharaohs by millennia. Not 2500 BCE as Egyptology insists, but perhaps as far back as 10,000 BCE, a time when the Sahara was still green and rivers flowed across the desert. His findings sent a quiet tremor through archaeology. Mainstream scholars resisted the idea fiercely. Egypt, they argued, emerged fully formed, the first great civilization, not a child of some forgotten predecessor. But stone does not care about reputation. It records what it endures, and the Sphinx has endured storms no historian remembers. You kneel near her base, brushing your hand across the grooves. The limestone crumbles lightly under your touch. Each flake is a story, each layer an age. You imagine the rain falling, pooling at her feet, a monsoon world long erased. Behind her rise the pyramids, three sharp silhouettes against the morning sky. They stand so precisely aligned to the cardinal directions that even modern engineers struggle to replicate their accuracy. The Great Pyramid's sides deviate from true north by less than a fraction of a degree. Its proportions encode mathematical constants, ps, phi, and even the relationship between Earth's circumference and its polar radius. Coincidence, say the textbooks. Devotion, say the priests. But perhaps you think precision is its own kind of language, a message carved in geometry. The Egyptologist guiding your visit gestures toward the horizon. Every stone has its purpose, he says softly. but not every purpose survives translation. He tells you of a theory proposed in the 1970s by engineer Robert Bauval that the layout of the three pyramids mirrors the stars of Orion's belt, not as they appear now, but as they looked around 10,500 BCE, that date again. The same epoch Soshok proposed for the Sphinx, the same window when ice melted, seas rose, and the world's climate convulsed. Coincidence begins to feel like rhythm. You climb partway up the causeway leading toward the Great Pyramid. The stones are warm, humming faintly in the sunlight. From this height, the plateau seems alive. Temples, shafts, tunnels, each aligned with deliberate precision. You realize the entire complex is less a collection of buildings and more a map, a cosmic diagram written on the earth. Ancient texts speak of Zep Tepi, the first time, when gods ruled upon the land before the age of men. Egyptian priests described it not as myth, but as memory, a golden epoch shattered by flood and darkness, after which civilization had to begin again. Most historians interpret it as allegory, but what if it wasn't? What if the gods were simply survivors, the remnants of a civilization that fell when the world last ended? The breeze shifts, carrying the faint scent of sand and stone. The sound of voices drifts across the plateau, tourists, guides, laughter. Yet you feel detached from them, suspended between worlds. Around you stand monuments that have seen empires rise and vanish like waves. Rome, Byzantium, Britain, all brief, all temporary. But this has endured since before the calendar itself began. As the sun climbs, heat wraps around you like a shroud. You retreat into the Sphinx temple, a low stone structure built from blocks weighing up to 200 tons. The walls fit together so tightly that you can't slip a blade between them. Inside, it's cool and shadowed, the air thick with the scent of dust and age. You run your fingers along the seams. No mortar, no error. Archaeologists debate who built this temple. Khafra, the supposed builder of the Sphinx, or someone far older. The debate circles endlessly, like sand caught in wind. Yet beneath every argument lies the same unspoken tension. Someone had to teach the first builders how. You imagine it now, a line of craftsmen working by torchlight, lifting impossible weights with forgotten methods. Perhaps they sang as they worked, the rhythm keeping time as stone met stone. Perhaps they remembered stories of an older land, one swallowed by rising seas. Outside, the light begins to soften. The sun slips low, and the Sphinx's face glows amber, then red, then the color of old fire. You sit at her feet, the city's noise fading behind you, and wonder if her expression was ever meant to be human at all. The erosion has blurred her features, but in the right light, she looks almost alien, patient, knowing, ancient beyond comprehension. You think back to Göbekli Tepe, buried deliberately, hidden as if to preserve it for someone else. And here stands the Sphinx, half buried by time, guarding monuments that encode the stars, one forgotten beneath earth, the other staring endlessly at heaven. It feels less like coincidence, and more like conversation, the earth and sky whispering the same story through different languages. The guide calls your name. It's time to leave. The evening wind sweeps across the plateau, carrying fine grains of sand that sting the skin. You glance back one last time. For a moment it seems as though the Sphinx is breathing, exhaling dust, inhaling centuries. As the car descends toward Cairo, city lights flicker like constellations reborn on land. You can't shake the feeling that you've just walked through a message written in stone, one that began long before human memory. And yet, there's more. Because beneath other horizons, beneath the calm blue waters of Japan, India, and the North Sea, lie ruins just as precise, just as deliberate, untouched by human hands for 12,000 years. Cities drowned by the end of the last ice age, their streets still silent under silt and coral. You look out the window at the fading sky, your reflection shimmering against the glass. The Sphinx, Göbekli Tepe, the flood myths, the alignments, they all point towards something vast, something forgotten, something waiting beneath the sea. Tomorrow you'll follow the trail there, but tonight, as the stars rise over the Nile, the question refuses to fade. If the Sphinx remembers the rain, what else does the ocean remember? The ocean does not keep time the way we do. It remembers differently, not in years or dynasties, but in silence and pressure. What it takes, it does not return easily. Yet sometimes, when the light hits the water just right, it reveals a ghost, a shape, a line, a fragment of geometry, too perfect to be chance. Tonight, that's where our journey leads, below the waves, into the places the earth has tried to forget. You stand on the deck of a small research vessel off the southern coast of Japan. The sun has just begun to rise, a pale coin trembling on the horizon. The air smells of salt and diesel. Beneath you, the Pacific stretches endless and calm, but the sonar readings on the monitor below deck tell another story. 200 feet down lies a structure that defies explanation. Ridges, platforms, terraces, even something that looks like a staircase descending into the abyss. The Japanese call it Yonaguni. To some, it's a natural formation, sculpted by currents and coincidence. To others, it's a sunken city, the last breath of a civilization erased when the seas rose 12,000 years ago. A diver shouts something in Japanese, and the crew begins lowering lines into the water. You check your gear, the hiss of compressed air, the tug of the regulator, and step over the edge. The sea folds over you, like velvet. Down here, sound vanishes. The only noise is your own breathing, slow and mechanical, echoing inside your helmet. You descend through blue, then green, then a darkening grey that feels almost solid. And then, out of the murk, the structure appears, massive, angular, unmistakably deliberate. Blocks of sandstone cut into right angles, platforms stacked with surgical precision. A staircase descends toward a flat plaza, and beyond it, terraces rise, like the steps of a ziggurat. You run your gloved hand along the stone. It's smooth, unnaturally so. Some claim these are natural fractures, the result of tectonic uplift and erosion. But as your light glides across the surface, you see something that chills you, parallel grooves carved into the rock, meeting at perfect 90-degree corners. Nature rarely makes right angles. Nature is fluent in chaos. This feels like grammar. You swim lower, small fish dart through gaps in the structure. Between two walls lies what could be an altar, or perhaps a foundation stone. Every instinct tells you this is no accident. Even the orientation seems intentional, aligned roughly with magnetic north. When you resurface, the air feels too light, too thin. The captain offers you a towel, but you barely notice. You're staring at the sonar image, printed on the monitor, the outlines of staircases, plazas, and terrace, rising like echoes from the seabed. You remember the last lines of your field notes from Egypt. If the Sphinx remembers the rain, what else does the ocean remember? Now you have your answer, or at least its shadow. For decades, the Yonaguni monument has divided archaeologists. Some see it as the work of erosion, others as proof of a civilization that predates every known culture by millennia. In the 1990s, Professor Masaki Kimura mapped its dimensions, over 500 feet long, with flat terraces and ramps too symmetrical to dismiss. He found what he believed to be roadways and carvings depicting animals and symbols. Critics called it pseudoscience, a fantasy born of wishful thinking. But wishful thinking doesn't explain the precision of the cuts, nor the way the terraces mirror ancient sites on land. And it isn't alone. Half a world away, beneath the North Sea, lies another lost world, Doggerland. 12,000 years ago, it was a fertile plain connecting Britain to continental Europe, a land of rivers, forests, and grasslands where mammoths and hunters once roamed. As the ice sheets melted, the sea crept higher, swallowing valleys and lakes, until the entire landscape vanished beneath the waves. Today, fishermen still pull up the bones of elk and humans from the seabed, along with stone tools, hearth fragments, and carved wood darkened by age. In sonar maps, the shapes of ancient river systems still linger, ghostly arteries beneath the modern sea. Imagine it, a world erased not by war but by water, villages where children once played now silent beneath tides. Fires extinguished not by time but by flood. And this same story repeats across the globe. Off the coast of India, in the Gulf of Cambodge, sonar scans have revealed geometric patterns on the seabed, lines and angles forming grids that look suspiciously like streets. When samples of wood and pottery were dredged up, carbon dating returned ages of nearly 9,000 years before the present. The discovery caused a storm. The Indian government called it the world's oldest city. Skeptics countered that the artifacts had drifted from elsewhere, carried by currents. The debate faded, funding dried up, and the site slipped back into silence. But silence does not erase. Even the Black Sea tells a similar tale. Geological cores show that around 7,600 years ago, seawater from the Mediterranean burst through the Bosporus, flooding a vast freshwater lake and drowning thousands of square miles of land. Some scholars believe this was the origin of the biblical flood, a memory of catastrophe encoded in myth. You begin to notice a rhythm: water rising, cultures vanishing, memory mutating into legend. Perhaps that's why flood myths are universal. From Sumer to Mesoamerica, nearly every civilization remembers a time when the world drowned. The gods grew angry, or the stars shifted, or the ice melted. The reasons differ, but the memory remains. And maybe they all remember the same event: the Younger Dryas, the sudden climate shift 12,800 years ago when global temperatures plummeted and then surged, melting ice sheets and raising sea levels by more than 100 meters. When that flood came, entire continents were rewritten. The Polynesians speak of Hawaii, the homeland that sank beneath the sea. The Tamils remember Kumari Kandam, a lost kingdom swallowed by the Indian Ocean. The Greeks told of Atlantis, gone in a single day and night of misfortune. Different names, same memory. You return to your cabin that night, the boat rocking gently on the dark sea. The sonar still hums in the background, tracing the depths like a heartbeat. You flip through old notes: Göbekli Tepe, the Sphinx, Doggerland, Yonaguni, and realize they're all fragments of the same mosaic. Civilizations do not begin, they re-emerge. Each new dawn is built on the ruins of the one before. Outside, thunder rolls across the horizon. A storm is coming. You step onto the deck, and the air smells of rain and electricity. Lightning flashes over the sea, and for an instant, the water glows, and you swear you can see the outline of the structure below, glowing faintly beneath the waves. The ocean closes again, silent. Somewhere far below, stone waits in darkness, carved by hands we no longer remember. And as the storm breaks overhead, another question forms, as deep and unsettling as the water itself. If this was just one city among many, if all these ruins are merely fragments, then what else sleeps beneath the sea, and what would happen if it ever chose to rise again? The storm has passed, but the sea still heaves with memory. Long after lightning has faded, the waves keep whispering the same refrain, the sound of water reclaiming what once belonged to land. You stand on the deck, the air cool and sharp, and you can't shake the thought that this rhythm, this endless rise and retreat, is more than weather, it's remembrance. Every culture has a story about a flood. Some are gentle, like the Sumerian flood of Ziusudra, where the gods cleanse the world to begin anew. Others are cataclysmic, walls of water swallowing continents, mountains turned to islands, the sky itself collapsing into sea. But what unites them isn't fear, it's familiarity. It's the sense that humanity didn't imagine these floods, it survived them. You return below deck, where the charts and maps spread across the table form a strange collage of myth and geology. Arrows trace ancient shorelines, symbols mark vanished, river deltas now hidden beneath the sea. On one map, the world at the end of the Ice Age looks almost unrecognizable. Coastlines shifted, whole regions erased. The red circles mark the sites you've just traced in your journey. Göbekli Tepe, high above the ancient floodplain, the Sphinx's rain-carved face, the drowned monuments of Yonaguni and Candlelit. They all share one date, 12,800 years ago. That's when something changed, not slowly, as history prefers, but violently, as if the planet itself inhaled fire. Scientists call it the Younger Dryas, a sudden brutal reversal of the warming that ended the Ice Age. Temperatures plummeted in a matter of decades. Glaciers surged back across the continents. Then, just as suddenly, the cold vanished, and the meltwater poured into the oceans with a force that would have rewritten coastlines across the globe. No one knows exactly why. Some point to the collapse of vast ice dams in North America, releasing inland seas into the Atlantic in torrents that altered global currents. Others whisper of something more dramatic, a comet or asteroid impact that left a thin layer of platinum and microscopic glass ferrules scattered across North America and Europe, fused by unimaginable heat. Whatever the cause, the effect was the same. The world drowned. You imagine what that must have felt like for those who lived through it. A night when the stars disappeared behind smoke and storm. Rivers boiling, mountains shedding their glaciers, the sea climbing higher every sunrise. To us, it's data, carbon readings, isotope shifts, sediment cores. To them, it was the end of everything. But here's the strange part. They remembered. Thousands of years later, those survivors' descendants told stories that align with eerie precision. In Sumer, the god Enel decides humanity has grown too loud and sends a flood to erase it. A single man, Ziusudra, is warned by the god Enki, builds a great boat and survives. In India, the ancient Shatapatha Brahmana tells of Manu, a man who saves himself and the seeds of life by following a divine fish that warns of a world-drowning deluge. In Mesoamerica, the Aztecs spoke of the Son of Water when the gods destroyed the previous world in a flood and humans were transformed into fish. In Greece, Deucalion and Pyrrha survive a divine flood sent by Zeus, floating for 9 days before the waters recede and civilization begins again. Different languages, different continents, same story, and beneath the poetry, the details line up with what geology already knows, that sea levels rose more than 100 meters at the end of the Ice Age. That coastlines shifted inward hundreds of miles. That fertile plains like Doggerland, Beringia, and the Sunda Shelf, once home to humans, vanished beneath the tide. It's as if the earth itself committed the same act as those ancient priests at Göbekli Tepe, burial, not of temples, but of continents. A deliberate closing of one chapter before the next began. The ship rocks gently as you pour a cup of coffee, its surface rippling like a miniature tide. You stare at the reflection of the cabin light in the liquid, distorted by the motion. Maybe the flood was never just a single event. Maybe it's a cycle, rise and fall, memory and forgetting, repeated through epochs. Civilizations rise, build and drown. Their survivors scatter, carrying fragments of memory that later harden into myth. The flood becomes the boundary between worlds, the before and after of history itself. Outside, the sun climbs higher, and the sea turns a soft metallic blue. You can almost see the reflection of lost coastlines shimmering beneath the surface. In your mind, you follow the retreating glaciers northward, across the melting plains of North America, where the Clovis culture once thrived, hunters who vanished as suddenly as the mammoths they pursued. Across Europe, where ancient forests drowned in peat and salt. Across Asia, where rising waters severed land bridges and scattered people into islands. And in every place, the same aftermath, silence, then rebuilding. Perhaps Göbekli Tepe wasn't an isolated miracle of inspiration. Perhaps it was a memory, a deliberate attempt to preserve what was lost, to rewrite in stone what the ocean erased. You recall the spiral carving found in that subterranean chamber, the one that seemed to draw the eye inward, like a vortex or whirlpool. Maybe it wasn't just decoration, maybe it was a symbol of the flood itself, a map of time repeating. As the afternoon passes, you spread out a new map, this one ancient, drawn on worn parchment. The Piri Reis map, dated to 1513, created by an Ottoman admiral who claimed his sources were far older. On it, the coastlines of South America are accurate beyond what 16th century explorers could have known. And below them, there's something impossible, a depiction of Antarctica, not as an ice-covered wasteland, but as an open, temperate land with rivers and mountains visible. Centuries later, radar scans beneath the Antarctic ice confirmed the same topography. How could a map from 1513 show a continent that wasn't officially discovered until 1820, and show it without ice that has covered it for at least 6,000 years? Some claim luck or coincidence. Others believe the cartographer copied fragments of ancient charts, remnants of a civilization that once mapped the world before the flood. The name that often surfaces is Charles Hapgood, a historian who argued that these maps are evidence of an advanced seafaring culture, erased by the cataclysm that ended the last ice age. Even Albert Einstein, cautious and skeptical, wrote that Hapgood's theory was not impossible. You trace the outline of Antarctica on the parchment with your finger, and the ship creaks softly beneath you. The thought is dizzying, that we may have inherited knowledge from a world that drowned, that fragments of its science drifted through myth, resurfacing in ways we no longer recognize. Outside, the light fades. The waves turn dark as ink. Somewhere deep below, the drowned ruins of Yonaguni sleep under centuries of silt, the water above them calm now, indifferent. You close the map and look toward the horizon. The ocean stretches infinite, yet you can't help feeling it isn't empty. It's an archive, a tomb, a mirror, and perhaps a warning. Because if the last great flood was the end of one world, the next might be the beginning of another. The sky deepens into violet, lightning flickers far away, a pulse behind the clouds. You lean against the railing, eyes fixed on the line where sea meets night. Somewhere beyond it, beneath miles of frozen silence, lies the next mystery. Antarctica, a continent of ice that once was green, its secrets locked beneath kilometers of frozen memory. And as the ship turns southward, the engines humming softly through the dark. You feel it again, that pulse beneath the world, steady and waiting. The flood erased civilizations once. What might the ice be hiding now? You wake to a sound that isn't the sea. It's the hum of engines buried beneath ice. The ship has crossed into southern waters, past the point where the compass trembles, and the horizon glows white instead of blue. Antarctica lies ahead, vast, silent, and ancient, a continent that doesn't welcome visitors so much as tolerate them. The cold here feels different. It doesn't bite, it presses. It reminds you that warmth is temporary, that memory itself can freeze. You stand on deck as the first outlines of icebergs drift past, cathedrals of glass and light, glowing faintly in the dawn. Somewhere beneath them, beneath miles of frozen ocean and time, lies the world's final mystery. It was here that an Ottoman admiral, 5 centuries ago, sketched the impossible. The Piri-Reis map of 1513, drawn on gazelle skin, is small enough to fit on a desk, and large enough to fracture history. On its curling edges, the admiral charted the coasts of West Africa and South America with uncanny accuracy. But at the bottom of the parchment, where every geographer of his age would have drawn only ocean, he inked the outline of another land, a massive continent stretching across the southern hemisphere. Its coastline matches, almost perfectly, the Queen Maud Land region of Antarctica, not as it appears now beneath 2 miles of ice, but as radar surveys in the 20th century revealed it to be ice-free, with rivers and mountains exposed. No one knows how Piri-Reis could have known. You step into the ship's small lab, where copies of ancient maps cover the wall. The Orientius Phineas map of 1531, showing Antarctica's bays and inlets. With the same eerie precision, the Buashi map of 1737, depicting not just the continent's shape, but its internal mountain ranges, mirroring modern satellite scans. The room smells of ink and salt. A soft vibration hums through the floor as the ship cuts through slush. You can hear the wind begin to howl, the kind of wind that seems older than weather. The historian aboard, a quiet woman with silver hair, looks up from her desk. "They shouldn't have been able to draw this," she says, tapping the parchment, "unless they were copying something even older." That's the theory proposed by Charles Hapgood, the American historian who, in the 1960s, suggested that these maps weren't inventions of Renaissance explorers at all, but fragments of a prehistoric source handed down through forgotten empires. His book, Maps of the Ancient Sea Kings, argued that an advanced seafaring civilization must have charted the globe long before recorded history, when the world's ice caps were smaller and Antarctica's coasts were still free of ice. The idea scandalized academia. Yet one of Hapgood's correspondents, Albert Einstein himself, wrote that the concept was not impossible. The words hang in the air like frost. Not impossible. You look back at the map, each line feels deliberate, each contour certain. There's no hesitation in the ink. Whoever first drew these shapes wasn't guessing. They were remembering. The historian spreads out a modern radar image beside the old parchment. The fit is uncanny. River valleys match. Mountain chains coincide. Even the orientation aligns. As if both were drawn from the same master chart. She smiles faintly. You know what the strangest part is? The latitude lines. They're accurate to within a degree. Whoever mapped this knew the curvature of the Earth centuries before Magellan proved it by sailing. Outside, the ice groans. Somewhere, the hull cracks through a thin sheet, the sound echoing like thunder trapped under glass. You step out onto the observation deck. The horizon is endless, a white silence broken only by shadows of distant peaks. Beneath your boots, this continent stores the most complete geological record on Earth. Every snowfall, is a page. Every layer a year. Scientists have drilled cores that capture 800,000 years of atmosphere. Within those frozen bubbles lie traces of ancient ash, cosmic dust, and the breath of vanished worlds. You imagine a civilization here, long before the ice. Forests of beech and fern, rivers cutting through fertile valleys. Maybe even cities, stone and timber now crushed beneath kilometers of frozen time. It sounds impossible, but the evidence says Antarctica was once green. Fossilized pollen, leaves, and even tree trunks have been found embedded in the ice. Sediment samples show that 12,000 years ago, sections of the coast were tundra, habitable, mild, alive. And then suddenly, they weren't. Something shifted. The same global cataclysm that raised the seas and drowned Doggerland also sealed this continent under a tomb of snow. In a few centuries, a blink in geological time, an entire ecosystem vanished, beneath ice thicker than cathedrals. You close your eyes and imagine what that moment looked like. Rain turning to sleet, rivers freezing mid-flow, cities evacuating in panic, as glaciers advanced like slow avalanches of silence. Perhaps some of them escaped. Perhaps they sailed north, carrying with them the maps now known as myths. A radio crackles behind you, the ship's captain speaking in clipped tones. Ice shelf ahead. We'll stop near the ridge for the night. You walk to the bow. The water here is dark as iron. The ship slows, engines humming softly as it glides between mountains of ice. The aurora begins to form, green curtains of light rippling across the polar sky, their glow reflecting off the frozen peaks like ghosts of fire. It feels like the planet itself is breathing again. The historian joins you, her scarf fluttering in the wind. "Do you know what the ancients called this place?" she asks. "Terra Australis Incognita, the unknown southern land." They believed it existed to balance the world. Balance. The word lingers, the earth seeking equilibrium through destruction and renewal, through flood and freeze, every age correcting the last. You wonder if that balance extends to us, if civilization itself is just another oscillation, rising and falling with the climate's pulse. The aurora shifts from green to violet. In the distance, a mountain of ice fractures, and the echo rolls across the sea like a drumbeat. The historian turns away, whispering almost to herself. If these maps are memories, then maybe the ice isn't hiding ruins, maybe it's guarding them. That night, you can't sleep. The ship creaks, the wind moans through the masts, and your cabin feels smaller with every gust. You spread the map across your desk again. The inked outline of Antarctica glows faintly under lamplight. You trace the rivers, the inlets, the mountains, all drawn centuries before human eyes ever saw them. And as your finger moves, you notice something else. A mark, tiny, almost invisible, on the parchment's southern edge. A symbol that looks like a circle divided into 4 parts. A wheel, or maybe a compass. But it's not a European design. It's identical to carvings found thousands of miles away, on the pillars of Göbekli Tepe. The realization freezes you more than the cold outside. How could 2 artifacts, separated by continents and millennia, share the same symbol? You stare at it until the lamp begins to flicker. The ink seems to shimmer, as if reacting to the shifting light. You blink, and for a heartbeat, it looks almost alive. A spiral turning slowly, the same pattern that once adorned the bare stones of Anatolia. The lamp dies. Darkness folds over the cabin. Outside, the ice groans again, louder this time, closer, almost deliberate. And for one breathless moment, you think you hear something beneath it. Not cracking, not wind, but a deep, rhythmic sound, like a heartbeat far below the ice. You lean closer to the window. The aurora flashes once, twice, then goes dark. The ocean and the sky become one black mirror, and somewhere beneath that mirror, the world you thought you knew begins to shift. The ice releases you slowly, as if reluctant to let go. Weeks later, the chill of Antarctica still clings to your bones, carried north through airports, deserts, and long, sleepless flights. By the time you arrive in South America, the air feels heavy again, dense with oxygen, color, and a pulse you'd almost forgotten. But the silence remains. It follows you like an echo. You stand now on the Altiplano, high in the Bolivian Andes, nearly 13,000 feet above sea level. The landscape looks alien, a flat, endless plateau ringed by mountains that bite into the horizon like ancient teeth. The air is thin and sharp, every breath feels earned. The locals call this place the navel of the world, and as you look out over the ruins scattered across the plain, you start to understand why. This is Tiwanaku, a city that predates the Inca, that may have risen long before history began counting. Archaeologists say it thrived around 500 AD, but some geologists, pointing to lake sediments and astronomical alignments, whisper of a far older date, perhaps 10,000 BC, when the nearby Lake Titicaca's shoreline lay hundreds of feet higher, lapping at the city's edge. You walk among the stones. They are enormous, not in scale, but in precision. Blocks of andesite and sandstone fit together like the pieces of a child's toy, every edge perfect, every corner sharp enough to draw blood. The joints between them are so tight that a single sheet of paper couldn't slide through. No mortar holds them, just geometry, carved with a confidence that feels almost mechanical. Your guide, an Emira elder with eyes as clear as mountain water, touches one of the blocks. They call these God's work, he says softly, because men couldn't move them. He's not exaggerating. Some of the stones here weigh over 100 tons, quarried from miles away, across rivers and valleys. Modern cranes could barely manage them, and yet they rest here, stacked and interlocked with mathematical perfection. You reach the center of the site, where a great stone gateway stands half buried in earth, the gateway of the sun. Its single lintel weighs 10 tons, carved from one solid slab of andesite. Across its face run symbols, not random decorations, but precise reliefs of figures, suns and geometric grids that many believe form a calendar. Some researchers claim it measures the solar year to within seconds. Others see it as an astronomical device, tracking the equinoxes, the solstices, even the slow precession of Earth's axis across millennia. Whoever built this understood the heavens as intimately as the masons understood stone. As you trace the carvings, a pattern begins to emerge, the same obsession with precision, the same command of geometry and astronomy that appeared in the pyramids, in Göbekli Tepe, in the buried temples beneath the sea. Different continents, different epochs. The same language, symmetry, alignment, permanence. Just beyond Tiwanaku lies Pumapunku, the place locals call the Door of the Jaguar. It's not a city, not even a temple, just a scattering of colossal blocks, laid out with a precision that feels impossible. You walk toward them through dust and silence. The air hums faintly with altitude, and then you see it. A block shaped like a massive hawk, one of dozens scattered like puzzle pieces across the ground. Each has been cut with grooves, slots, and interlocking joints, as if designed to connect, not randomly, but as part of some larger structure. The corners are laser straight, the surfaces perfectly smooth, though carved from some of the hardest stone on Earth. Engineers who have studied them with calipers and 3D scans admit the machining tolerance rivals modern stone-cutting technology. Yet these blocks are thousands of years old. Look closely, your guide says. Each one is the same. You kneel beside an H block, brushing away sand. The precision is unsettling. Every edge measures identically to the millimeter. Each groove is uniform, as though cut with the same tool. But the people who supposedly built this had no metal saws, no wheels, no writing. To this day, no one can explain how the stones were shaped, transported, or assembled. The quarry lies 10 miles away, across a steep ravine. The route between is uneven and broken, impossible for any simple sled or rope system. Archaeologists offer theories, levers, ramps, ropes, patience, but the stones disagree. They feel too deliberate, too aware. Standing here, surrounded by broken geometry and sky, you begin to feel what every visitor must, that this isn't just construction, it's communication, maybe not a temple, maybe a message. The H-blocks of Pumapunku might once have formed part of a platform or gateway. Some scholars think they were arranged in tiers, like an altar or observatory, but their real mystery lies in design. Each block is modular, identical, able to interlock in multiple configurations. It's as if the builders understood prefabrication, a concept millennia ahead of its time. You walk further, and the wind picks up. The clouds roll low, brushing the mountain tops. Somewhere to the east, beyond the Altiplano, lies Baalbek in Lebanon, another site that shouldn't exist. A Roman temple now sits atop its base, but beneath it are stones older than Rome, older than Egypt. Blocks so vast they defy logic. The largest, known as the Stone of the Pregnant Woman, weighs over 1,000 tons, the weight of 3 Boeing 747s. Another, still partially buried, measures even more. No ancient technology, not even Roman engineering, can explain how they were moved from their quarry, raised and set with such precision. From Tiwanaku to Baalbek, the same question repeats. Who were these builders of silence? These nameless architects who spoke in stone and vanished before history began to write. You climb a small ridge overlooking the ruins. The air is thin enough to make your heart pound. Below you, the pattern of the site unfolds, squares, lines, symmetry carved into the earth itself. As the sun sets, the stones begin to glow, red, then gold, then grey. The light moves across them like breath. You think of the ice again, the frozen continent that hides rivers and mountains beneath its surface. What if these stones are the same? The visible tips of something buried deeper, part of a design too vast to see all at once. The guide breaks your reverie. At night, he says, the stars here line up with the stones. The ancients watched the sky from this place. They said it was where the earth met heaven. You wait until darkness. When it comes, it's absolute. The stars unfold with impossible clarity, sharp as glass, so bright they cast shadows. You lie on your back between the stones, the Milky Way stretching across the sky like an ancient road. And then you see it, the constellation of Orion tilted just above the horizon, 3 stars forming the belt. They mirror perfectly the layout of the H-blocks below. Not coincidence, not accident. Alignment. Across continents and millennia, the same pattern returns. Orion over Giza, Orion over Tiwanaku, Orion carved into the gateway of the sun. It feels as if every civilization, every forgotten builder, was drawing from the same celestial memory, the same map written not on paper, but in the night sky. You close your eyes, and for a moment you can almost hear it, not words, but resonance. The vibration of stone tuned to starlight, geometry speaking to gravity, matter remembering its maker. The wind rises, carrying dust across the plateau. It sounds like whispering. You can't tell if it's the air, the stones, or something older, a chorus of civilizations still singing beneath the ground. And just before you drift into sleep, a final thought takes root, quiet and terrifying. If these builders all look to the same stars, then perhaps the same stars once looked back. The next morning, you wake beneath the same sky the ancients studied, but now you can't stop seeing patterns. Everywhere, the angles of the stones, the distance between the ruins, even the line of the mountains in the distance. Everything seems deliberate, connected, tuned to something larger. You board a small prop plane out of La Paz, and as it lifts above the Altiplano, the grid of ancient foundations stretches far below like circuitry etched into the earth. From above, Tiwanaku doesn't look like ruins at all. It looks like a diagram, as if the builders were sketching not a temple, but a formula. As the plane banks eastward, the landscape transforms, deserts to forest, forest to endless green. Hours later, you land outside Mexico City, where the ground itself still hums with history. The air smells of rain and dust, alive with static. Somewhere beyond the skyline lies Teotihuacan, the city of the gods. No one knows who built it. By the time the Aztecs arrived, the city was already ancient, its avenues lined with empty temples, its pyramids blackened by time. They gave it a name, Teotihuacan, the place where men become gods, because they could not imagine mere humans constructing something so vast. You stand at the base of the Pyramid of the Sun, craning your neck upward. The steps rise in perfect tiers, each one narrower than the last, until they vanish into sky. The structure covers more ground than the Great Pyramid of Giza. It's built with 2.5 million tons of stone and rubble, aligned precisely to the setting of the sun on the day of zenith, when it passes directly overhead. But the strangest thing about Teotihuacan isn't its size, it's its symmetry. The Avenue of the Dead, the city's main thoroughfare, runs perfectly north-south, just a few degrees offset from true north. The same deviation found in Giza, the ratio between the Pyramid of the Sun and its smaller counterpart, the Pyramid of the Moon, mirrors the ratio between Earth and the Moon's diameters. And when mapped from above, the layout of the three main pyramids mirrors something else entirely, the stars of Orion's belt. You've seen this before, Giza, Tiwanaku. Now here, 3 points in perfect celestial alignment, a code written across hemispheres. Archaeologists call it coincidence. Statisticians call it pattern recognition. But as you stand atop the Pyramid of the Sun and look down the Avenue of the Dead, where shadows stretch in perfect rhythm with the fading light, it's hard not to feel otherwise. From here, the view is dizzying. Miles of buried streets, temples, courtyards, and foundations arranged like a giant calendar. Some researchers believe the entire city was constructed as a cosmic model, its pyramids representing planets, its layout mirroring the solar system as it appeared around 100 AD. Others think it's older, much older. When you climb down, the air feels thicker. At ground level, the stones hum with residual heat. You brush your hand against one and feel a faint vibration, almost like a pulse. It reminds you of the same rhythm you felt beneath the ice, that low, steady thrum, the Earth's buried heartbeat. That night, you wander through the site after sunset. The moon rises over the Pyramid of the Moon, casting silver light across the avenue. Fireflies drift like slow sparks, and for a brief moment, the air feels aware. You remember the Aymara elders' words in Bolivia. The stones speak. Maybe they do, because thousands of miles away, in the jungles of Cambodia, another city, Angkor Wat, speaks the same language. From above, its layout forms a mandala, concentric squares and causeways radiating outward like ripples. The central towers align not to the sun or the moon, but to the stars of Draco and Cygnus, constellations marking the celestial north. Thousands of years before, Even the moats surrounding the temple form perfect rectangles, representing cosmic oceans enclosing the world. When engineers plotted the alignment of its courtyards and corridors, they discovered something eerie. The arrangement of towers matches the relative positions of the stars in Draco at the dawn of the Last Age, roughly 10,500 BCE. That date again, the same epoch as Göbekli Tepe, the same era the Sphinx's erosion points to, the same moment when the flood reshaped the world. It's as though every one of these ancient sites is pointing to that same horizon of time, as if they all remember the same beginning. You trace their positions on your tablet: Tiwanaku, Giza, Teotihuacan, Angkor. The lines between them form a pattern that shouldn't exist, nearly perfect equidistance along a single great circle of the Earth. Some researchers have called it the axis of the ancients, a geometric alignment that includes Easter Island, the pyramids of Sudan, Mohenjo-Daro, and even the mysterious mounds of Cahokia in North America. It's not proof, not evidence, but it's something more subtle: intent. The world itself seems mapped like a machine, a blueprint laid across continents, every structure calibrated to the stars. Why? Perhaps the builders were measuring something larger than themselves, using the earth as an instrument, the heavens as a dial. Perhaps each site was a coordinate in a global system, one that once tracked the passage of ages. The idea sounds wild, but as night deepens over Teotihuacan, you can't ignore the geometry. The stars above mirror the city below so precisely that it feels less like architecture and more like reflection, as if the sky is looking down at its own design. You think of the Hermetic maxim, inscribed centuries later in Alexandria, as above, so below. Maybe it wasn't philosophy. Maybe it was instruction. The wind rises across the plain. The air fills with the faint scent of dust and ozone. You step between two crumbling walls, tracing your fingers along the stone. The temperature drops suddenly, unnaturally, and then you see it, carved faintly into the plaster, is a spiral, the same symbol from Göbekli Tepe and the Piri-Reis map. You blink, unsure if it's imagination or reality. The spiral seems to shimmer in the moonlight, its curve twisting inward like a galaxy. You kneel, heart racing, brushing away centuries of grime. The spiral glows faintly, where the moonlight strikes it. Beneath the carving are three small dots. Aligned vertically, Orion's belt. You look up instinctively, and there it is, Orion rising just above the horizon, the same constellation mirrored on the ground. Everywhere you've gone, it follows you: Göbekli Tepe's fox carvings pointing to Orion, Giza's pyramids aligned to its belt, Tiwanaku's gateways framing its stars. Even here, halfway around the world, the same signature repeats. It feels like a cosmic fingerprint. You step back, breathing hard. The wind cuts through the avenue, carrying whispers that almost sound like words. The shadows of the pyramids stretch and merge, forming shapes you can't quite name. For the first time, you wonder if the geometry isn't just human, if perhaps these alignments weren't built to worship the heavens, but to communicate with them. The spiral glows faintly once more, and then the light fades, leaving only stone. The air grows still. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolls, deep and long, though the sky is clear. It sounds like a drumbeat, ancient and slow. You can't tell if it's coming from above or below. You whisper into the silence, half to yourself, half to whatever might be listening. If these are messages written in stone, who were they written for? And in that stillness, you almost hear an answer. A voice carried through time, soft as dust and certain as gravity. For those who remember, the desert doesn't whisper, It roars, not loudly, but endlessly, a low, dry wind that never stops, carrying the hiss of eternity through dunes that shift like waves made of time. You've left the jungles and cities behind. Now only sand surrounds you, the kind of silence that hums inside your skull. The Sahara stretches in every direction, a golden ocean frozen mid-motion. But here, deep in Mauritania, in a place the locals call Sarat Richat, the land does something strange. It circles. From above, it looks like a fingerprint pressed into the earth. Vast concentric rings carved into the desert, each ridge curling inward toward a perfect center. The Richat structure, 50 kilometers wide, so large it can only truly be seen from space. For years, geologists believed it was an impact crater. Then they discovered no trace of impact, no shocked quartz, no meteorite debris, no melted rock. Instead, the formation is older than memory itself, its shape formed by slow uplift and erosion. Nature's work, they said. Coincidence, they said. But coincidence starts to look fragile when you stand inside it, because something about this place feels deliberate. The symmetry too clean, the proportions too precise. You climb one of the ridges, and the wind stings your face with sand. At the summit, the view is staggering, circles within circles stretching to the horizon, like the ruins of a colossal city eroded down to bone. And in that moment, it's impossible not to think of Plato. He described Atlantis as a vast kingdom beyond the Pillars of Heracles, the ancient name for the Strait of Gibraltar, a place west of Egypt, ringed by mountains, with plains rich in elephants and rivers that once fed the sea. A civilization advanced in geometry and engineering, destroyed in a single day and night of misfortune, swallowed by flood and fire. Most people dismiss it as allegory, a moral story about pride and downfall, but the details Plato gives are strangely specific. Dimensions, directions, measurements. He says Atlantis lay in concentric rings of land and water, 2 rings of sea, 3 of earth, perfectly circular. You look again at the Richat structure, shimmering under the sun like a mirage, and count them, 3 rings of land, their outer edges once carved by flowing water. A chill runs through you, though the heat presses down like a weight. Satellite images show faint traces of ancient riverbeds converging toward the structure's center. Sediment samples confirm that water once flowed here, not a trickle, but rivers. And long ago, before the Sahara was desert, this entire region was a lush savanna, alive with hippos, elephants, and forests. A lost world buried not beneath waves, but beneath sand. You walk down into the basin, the wind dying as you descend. The ground underfoot crunches with salt crystals, relics of an ancient lakebed. The air smells faintly of minerals, dry, metallic, like something preserved rather than dead. Your guide, a Tuareg nomad with indigo robes and a face carved by sun and sand, walks beside you silently. He gestures toward the horizon, where pale hills shimmer. There were once stories, he says softly, of a great kingdom that angered the gods. They say it vanished when the desert rose. You ask him if he believes it. He smiles, showing teeth like polished stone. We do not believe. We remember. At the center of the structure lies a low plateau, cracked and bare. You kneel, pressing your palm against the ground. The rock beneath is smooth, circular, almost polished, as if once worn by water or by hands. No temples, no statues, just shape, pattern, echo. Archaeologists will tell you the rich its geology, erosion sculpted by time, coincidence layered in stone. But when you overlay its coordinates with Plato's descriptions, the alignment is hauntingly close. The diameter matches, the placement matches. Even the surrounding topography, the mountains to the north, the open plain to the south, the river systems that once connected to the Atlantic, all fit. You climb to a nearby ridge where the wind carries the desert's low song. In the distance, faint lines cut across the dunes, not natural curves, but straight edges, perfect rectangles, revealed only under certain light. You squint, they fade, then return. The shapes are too uniform, too aligned. Ancient roads, foundations, or tricks of shadow. The sun dips lower, casting the structure into relief. The circles glow gold, then bronze, then darken into shadow. You feel as though you're standing inside the memory of a city, one that refuses to die, only to change form. As night falls, you light a small lantern near your tent. The desert cools fast, heat escaping into the stars. Above, the Milky Way spills across the sky, impossibly clear. You lie back and stare upward. Orion again, always Orion. Its belt points west, toward the Atlantic. The very direction the myths say Atlantis fell. You remember what the historian said back on the ship. If these maps are memories, maybe the ice isn't hiding ruins. Maybe it's guarding them. But what if not only ice guards them? What if the desert does too? The sand as patient a vault as the sea. The wind picks up, a long whisper across the dunes. It sounds almost like words. We are still here. You sit up, heart pounding. The lantern flickers violently, its flame bending sideways, then steadies again. The desert is empty, silent. But you can't shake the feeling that the geometry of the world itself is trying to speak. That each of these sites, from the temples of Anatolia to the pyramids of Egypt, from the terraces of Tiwanaku to the rings of the Sahara, are chapters of the same story. A story older than any nation, a memory carried in stone and silence. Plato said Atlantis was destroyed because its people grew arrogant, forgetting the harmony between heaven and earth. The gods, he wrote, withdrew their favor, and the land sank. But perhaps they didn't vanish overnight. Perhaps they moved. Perhaps their survivors built anew, smaller, simpler, scattered, keeping the knowledge alive in fragments, in alignments, in geometry. A civilization not erased, but redistributed. The wind shifts again, carrying fine sand over your footprints, erasing them within minutes. The desert doesn't keep records. It doesn't need to. It remembers in silence. You stand watching the horizon, where dunes glow silver under the moonlight. The concentric rings of the Richat fade into darkness, but you can still feel their shape, spiraling inward like an idea. The same spiral that has followed you from Göbekli Tepe to Teotihuacan. You whisper to yourself, barely audible over the wind. If the ocean remembers, and the ice remembers, maybe the sand does too. Behind you, the lantern flickers once more, then dies. And just before the dark swallows everything, you notice a faint blue glow on the far ridge, circular, pulsing faintly, like a buried heartbeat deep beneath the dunes. The desert hums again. You don't know if it's thunder or something waking up. The cold returns like a ghost. Not the clean, sharp kind of cold you felt before, but something deeper, heavier, like memory itself has turned to frost. You are back in Antarctica, though not above the ice this time. You are descending through it, miles below the surface, into a world that sunlight hasn't touched for perhaps 1,000,000 years. The research elevator rattles as it lowers through a narrow shaft drilled straight into the glacier. The walls are glassy blue, flecked with air bubbles trapped since before humanity existed. Each one contains an ancient breath, carbon, pollen, the faintest trace of volcanic ash. You imagine it like a frozen library, each layer a page in the Earth's diary. The radio crackles in your ear. A voice from the surface says, "You're approaching Vostok." Lake Vostok, the largest of Antarctica's subglacial lakes, buried beneath nearly 4 kilometers of solid ice. a body of water sealed off for so long that its ecosystem could be alien to everything we know. The elevator halts with a metallic groan. You step into a narrow chamber lit by sterile lamps. Everything smells faintly of ozone and metal. Through a reinforced window, you can see it, the black mirror of the lake, stretching into darkness under the ice ceiling. No ripples, no sound, just stillness, so complete. It hums. Scientists drilled into this hidden world only recently, melting a path down to collect samples. What they found was unsettling. Traces of bacteria that shouldn't exist. DNA fragments that match no known species on Earth's surface. Some samples hinted at larger organisms, multicellular, things adapted to crushing pressure and perpetual night. The team that discovered them spoke carefully, their words wrapped in caution. It could be contamination, they said, or something we simply don't recognize. But privately, a few of them whispered another word. Survivors, you stand at the glass, watching your reflection float above the black water. Beneath you, the temperature hovers just below freezing, yet the lake remains liquid, warmed not by sunlight, but by geothermal energy seeping upward from the Earth's mantle. A world within a world, an ocean beneath a continent of ice. And perhaps, if the old maps were true, the last refuge of something far older than humanity. You remember the Piri-Reis chart, and the others like it. Maps drawn centuries before Antarctica was discovered, depicting its coastlines free of ice. Hapgood's theory lingers in your mind, a crustal displacement, a violent shift of the planet's outer shell that dragged entire continents into new latitudes. If that happened, Antarctica may once have been tropical, its cities green, its harbors open. If a civilization had existed there, the ice would not have erased it. It would have preserved it. A preserved world, entombed but intact. The scientist beside you, her breath fogging her visor, points toward a monitor. Look, she says. The sonar picked something up. On the screen, faint outlines pulse in the dark water. Not fish, not debris. The shapes are too symmetrical. One looks almost circular, with regular ridges radiating from its center. Another, rectangular, elongated, resting flat against the lake bed. Geological formation, the surface team says, through the radio. But the scientist doesn't answer. She just leans closer to the glass. It's too even, she murmurs. The camera drone descends, its lights cutting a narrow beam through the blackness. Ice crystals drift like snow in reverse. The circular shape comes into view, a dome, half buried in sediment, its surface smooth and metallic. The edges are scarred, yet precise. Artificial. Are we recording, you ask? She nods, but you can see the tremor in her hand. The drone drifts closer. The dome's surface reflects light in muted arcs. Then the camera flickers, just for a second. When the feed stabilizes, faint lines are visible on the metal, concentric circles, etched deep, surrounding a spiral at the center. That symbol again, the same spiral carved into Göbekli Tepe's pillars. The same mark inked on the Piri-Reis map, the same design glowing faintly in the sand, at the center of the Sahara. Only now, here, beneath 4 kilometers of ice, it looks new, polished, untouched. Pull the drone back, the surface orders. But the signal is already fading. Static floods the monitor, then darkness. You and the scientist stare at the screen, waiting for the feed to return. The air in the chamber feels too thin, the lights too bright. For a moment you think you hear something beneath the hum of machinery, a low vibration that isn't mechanical, rhythmic like a slow heartbeat deep within the ice. The floor trembles, barely perceptible but real. Just the glacier shifting, someone says over the radio. Perfectly normal. You're not sure you believe them, because when the vibration fades, something else lingers. A tone, almost inaudible, like a sustained note. It seems to resonate in your chest, in your teeth, even in the metal walls around you. The scientist exhales shakily. Did you feel that? Before you can answer, a faint glow appears under the ice. A soft blue radiance emanating from the dome's center, pulsing like breath. The light spreads outward in concentric waves, reflecting through the water until the entire lake seems alive with motion. Is that bioluminescence? No one replies. The glow intensifies, then vanishes as quickly as it came, leaving only darkness. The instruments on the panel begin to flicker. Magnetic readings spike and fall. The radio cuts in and out. You can hear shouts from the surface, something about a compass anomaly, about interference. Then silence. For nearly a full minute, the entire base is cut off. The lights dim, the temperature drops. The only sound is the faint crack of ice above, shifting in unseen pressure. And then, just as abruptly, everything returns. The hum, the lights, the static chatter of instruments rebooting. The drone's camera flickers back to life for a split second. You catch one final frame before the feed collapses completely. Not the dome this time. Something else. A shape emerging from behind it. Vast, symmetrical, its outline framed by the scattering beam. It isn't mechanical. It isn't animal. It looks constructed, angular, as if walls, corridors, or perhaps an entire structure are buried there, frozen in the lake's black silt. The image freezes. The voice on the radio whispers, "That can't be natural." Your pulse thunders in your ears. You look again at the spiral symbol, glowing faintly on the recording, and a realization crawls through you. Maybe this isn't just evidence of a lost civilization. Maybe it's something older, something the Earth itself once hosted, something whose traces seeded every ancient culture afterward. The scientist looks at you, eyes wide. "We have to go deeper," she says. But even as she speaks, the vibration starts again, louder this time, resonating up through the platform, through your boots, through the air itself. The lights flicker, the instruments spike red. The last thing you hear before the feed cuts is her whisper, barely audible over the rising hum. "It's not dead." Then the ice groans, long, low, and terrible. The sound of a continent remembering. The recording ends. And far above, on the frozen surface of the world, the wind begins to move again, circling over the white void, carrying whispers no human language can translate. Something beneath the ice has stirred, and it has not forgotten us. The hum follows you long after you leave Antarctica. It lives in the hollow of your skull, that low vibration you can't unhear, the one that began beneath the ice. You tell yourself, it's just tinnitus, pressure, memory, but late at night, when everything else goes still, you can feel it again, the slow, pulsing rhythm of something vast beneath the earth, patient and awake. Weeks later, you find yourself in the archives of an old university, a labyrinth of dust and forgotten paper. Somewhere among these books might be a clue, a pattern linking what you saw beneath the ice to the first stories humanity ever told. And there it is, waiting like a whisper from the past, a single word that appears across cultures, continents, and epochs. The gods descended, different names, same pattern, always the same. In Sumer, the earliest recorded civilization, the gods were called the Anunnaki, those who came from the heavens to earth. Ancient tablets describe them not as ethereal spirits, but as physical beings who descended in fiery chariots, bringing knowledge of agriculture, architecture, and astronomy to a humanity still half wild. The texts say they shaped rivers, built temples, and taught people to measure time. In Egypt, the same motif appears. Thoth, the moon god, arrives from the stars, bearing the wisdom of numbers and writing. He teaches the priests geometry, so that the temples of earth mirror the heavens. His counterpart in later myths, Osiris, brings agriculture and laws, and when he is gone, he is remembered not as divine, but as the first king. In the Andes, it is Viracocha, the bearded god who walks out of Lake Titicaca after the flood, the same flood that destroyed the world of the giants. He carries tools of stone and light, commands the sun to rise, and instructs the survivors in engineering and civilization before vanishing across the sea. In Mesoamerica, Quetzalcoatl descends from the sky in a burst of smoke and wind, bringing maize, mathematics, and calendar cycles aligned with the cosmos. He promises to return when the stars are right, a phrase that feels less prophecy and more calculation. And across the sea, in China, ancient texts speak of the Yellow Emperor descending in a dragon chariot of metal from the heavens, bearing the lie, the cosmic order, teaching writing, medicine, and governance. Different names, different continents, the same story, beings from above, arriving after the flood, reviving civilization. You spread out maps on the table, one of ancient sites, one of star alignments. The same constellations appear again and again. Orion, Sirius, Pleiades. It's as if the builders of every ancient monument were responding to the same arrival, encoding the same gratitude, or perhaps the same warning. The ancient Sumerian tablets even list a chronology of these descents, measured in sars, units of 3,600 years. It's absurdly precise, as though the sky itself operated on a schedule. Each age begins with catastrophe, followed by the return of the gods, followed by rebirth. The cycle continues. Flood, silence, descent, awakening. You lean back in your chair. The room is cold and silent, except for the ticking of a clock. It occurs to you that the myths of descent might not be poetic at all. Maybe they were historical, attempts to describe what the survivors of global collapse actually saw. Imagine it, the world shattered by the Younger Dryas, civilizations erased, survivors scattered. Then one day, something appears in the sky, lights descending, fire from above, but controlled, deliberate, not destruction, but contact. The gods did not rise from the earth. They returned to it. Maybe that's why every early civilization begins suddenly, fully formed. Why agriculture, mathematics, and writing all appear within the same narrow window, around 10,000 BCE. No gradual invention, no learning curve, just arrival. You pull another text from the shelf, the Book of Enoch, banned from the biblical canon, but preserved in fragments. It speaks of watchers, celestial beings who descended upon Mount Hermon and taught humanity metalwork, medicine, astronomy, and the ways of the stars. But their interference, it says, came at a cost: the corruption of the world, the flood that followed, the cleansing of the earth. Mount Hermon, Lake Titicaca, the Giza Plateau, the same latitudes, the same symbolism, knowledge descending, then vanishing. You turn another page, this one filled with mathematical diagrams, ancient spirals, golden ratios, the same geometric language found in every sacred site. A phrase catches your eye: the measure of the earth is the measure of the heavens. You think of the ice dome beneath Lake Vostok, the perfect symmetry of its circles. The spiral etched on its surface wasn't random. It was the same equation, the pattern of creation and destruction. It wasn't a symbol, it was a key. Maybe these gods weren't divine in the way we imagine. Maybe they were the remnants of that lost civilization, survivors who hid beneath the ice, or beyond the stars, or within the earth itself, emerging after every cataclysm to rebuild what was lost. If so, the hum you heard wasn't a relic, it was a signal. You close the books, but your mind won't rest. The evidence has followed you across continents, across millennia, buried temples, sunken cities, star maps, and now, something alive beneath the Antarctic ice. You recall the drone footage, the metallic dome, the spiral, the light that pulsed like breath, and the voice over the radio. It's not dead. If that's true, then the descent isn't ancient history. It's a cycle, and we might be standing at the edge of the next one. The librarian walks past your table, glancing at the open maps. You've been studying the old gods, she says softly. You nod, trying to understand what they were. She pauses, then says, maybe the better question is, why they left. Her words linger as you leave the library and step into the night. The city hums with artificial light, electric, human, fragile. Above, the stars gleam cold and eternal. You find Orion again, those same 3 stars, watching as they have for every civilization before. You can't help but wonder if someone or something is watching back. Your phone buzzes. It's an encrypted message from one of the Antarctic researchers. 3 words only. It opened again. Your stomach drops. You zoom into the attached photo, blurry, taken from a satellite feed. A faint blue glow spreads beneath the ice sheet, circular and pulsing, just like before. But this time it's larger, far larger, stretching across several kilometers of subglacial terrain. Whatever lies beneath the ice isn't just stirring, it's awakening. The hum returns, faint but unmistakable, vibrating through your chest like distant thunder. You look up again at the stars, at Orion's belt, at the cold fire that has guided humanity for 10,000 years. You whisper the only words that feel real. They're coming back. And somewhere in the frozen dark of the southern world, the ice shifts, slow, deliberate, and alive. There are fires that burn wood, and fires that burn in silence, hidden, eternal, waiting inside memory. Tonight we search for that second kind, the one that doesn't warm the body, but the soul. The one that might explain why, tens of thousands of years ago, humanity suddenly woke up. You travel now, not across continents, but into time itself, deep into the Paleolithic world, long before temples, before writing, before the first recorded kings. A time when the earth was still thawing from the last great ice. In a valley in southern France, you descend into a cave called Lascaux. The air is damp and heavy, smelling of limestone and earth. Your footsteps echo softly against walls, painted with bison, horses, and bulls. Vivid, powerful, alive. These images were drawn by torchlight nearly 20,000 years ago, yet they still shimmer in the flickering glow. The artists who made them were supposed to be primitive, hunters, gatherers, wanderers. But these walls tell another story, of design, of awareness, of thought. The paintings aren't random, they're arranged according to pattern and repetition, with constellations subtly encoded above the animals' backs. Taurus, Pleiades, Orion. The same stars that ruled the skies of Göbekli Tepe. The same geometry the ancient builders mirrored in stone. You realize as you stand there that this was the first spark, the moment the human mind began to see itself reflected in the universe. But here's the question, why then? For hundreds of thousands of years, human ancestors carved tools and chased prey, but left little sign of imagination. Then suddenly, almost overnight in evolutionary time, came art, music, ritual, language, burial, architecture. Archaeologists call it the cognitive revolution, a mysterious leap around 50,000 years ago when our species seemed to awaken. But what caused it? Some say it was brain size or social cooperation. Others whisper of something stranger, that consciousness itself may have been introduced. You sit beside the ancient wall, the light of your lamp dancing across those painted eyes. They seem to look back at you. You think of the myths again, gods descending, bringing knowledge, fire, and law. In Greece, Prometheus steals fire from heaven and gives it to mankind, sparking civilization. In Sumer, Inky gifts humans the me, the laws of wisdom. In the Andes, Viracocha brings the light of reason. Maybe fire never meant flame at all. Maybe it meant mind. Perhaps what descended wasn't a being, but awareness, consciousness itself, seeded like a code into the human brain, unlocking something dormant. You remember the hum beneath the ice, that deep vibration you felt, that pulse that seemed alive. It didn't speak in words, but in resonance. It reminded you of something biological, neural, electrical. What if that sound wasn't external? What if it was inside us all along? The ancients called it the voice of the earth. Shamans across cultures described it, the hum beneath the drumbeat, the sound of creation itself. Modern science calls it the Schumann resonance, electromagnetic pulses that circle the planet, oscillating around 8 Hertz, the same frequency as the alpha waves in the human brain. Coincidence or connection? You close your eyes, and for a moment you can almost feel it, the rhythm matching your heartbeat, your breath, your thoughts. The same pulse that ripples through the planet's crust, through the ice, through the stones. Maybe this was the true descent, not gods stepping out of fire, but frequency aligning with biology, the mind tuning itself to the earth's song, or perhaps the earth tuning us. You move deeper into the cave, the walls narrow, the air grows still. You find a chamber known as the apse, its ceiling etched with thousands of abstract marks, spirals, lattices, zigzags. Some archaeologists call them doodles, but others, like the late David Lewis Williams, believe they represent visions, shapes seen by the brain in altered states of consciousness. And here's where it gets stranger. Modern neurobiology shows that these same geometric patterns, the lattice, the spiral, the tunnel, appear in the brain when it's subjected to deep trance or near-death experiences. They are, quite literally, the architecture of perception. It's as if these Paleolithic artists were mapping the inside of their own minds. The same shapes that appear in the geometry of ancient temples, in the mandalas of Tibet, in the spirals of Celtic stones, even in the carvings beneath the Antarctic ice. Always the same code. You sit on a rock, feeling the weight of time press around you. Could it be that these early humans weren't inventing religion, but remembering something, fragments of a language that predates speech? If the descent of knowledge wasn't external, but internal, then maybe the gods never left. Maybe they became us. That thought lingers, unsettling but magnetic. Every myth of divine creation suddenly reads like a metaphor for consciousness awakening inside flesh. The breath of life entering clay, the fire of reason sparking in darkness. And perhaps, each time the world resets, each flood, each ice age, that fire sleeps, only to be reignited when conditions allow. You recall the spiral on the dome beneath the ice, pulsing like a living circuit. Maybe that wasn't technology at all. Maybe it was something organic, a resonance machine designed not to broadcast, but to reconnect. If it has awakened again, perhaps it's not summoning gods. Perhaps it's reawakening the part of humanity that remembers being one. Outside the cave, the night is absolute. The stars blaze with cold clarity, untouched by cloud or city. You step out and breathe the crisp air. The Milky Way stretches above like a neural network of light, a cosmic brain, alive and endless. And suddenly you see it clearly. The same geometry connects everything: neurons and galaxies, rivers and lightning, cities and constellations. The pattern repeats at every scale, as above, so below. Maybe consciousness isn't confined to the human mind. Maybe it's woven into the universe itself, waiting in every atom for a spark. And long ago, that spark found us. You look up again at Orion, the three stars that have followed you through deserts, jungles, and ice. They gleam brighter tonight, almost aligned with a faint red streak. Mars glowing like an ember. Your phone vibrates. Another message. This one from the same Antarctic researcher. Only one sentence. It's not just light now. It's sound. Attached is an audio file. You press play. The noise is low at first. A rumble like shifting glaciers. Then it stabilizes into a steady rhythm, 8 beats per second, pulsing like breath, like a heartbeat, like the Earth's own resonance amplified. And faintly, beneath the hum, there's something else. A tone, rising, harmonizing, almost human. The signal cuts off. You stand there in the darkness, your pulse sinking to the rhythm that came from beneath the ice. You can't tell if it's communication or invocation, if it's calling to us or through us. Either way, you know this. Something buried has found its frequency again. And the fire that first woke in those caves, the fire that made us human, has started to burn brighter. You stare into the stars until your eyes water, whispering into the wind. What happens when the mind remembers everything? And somewhere, beyond the horizon, the earth answers with a single low, unmistakable sound. A heartbeat, growing louder. The sound hasn't stopped. It's quieter now, but it's everywhere. You hear it in engines, in wind, in the spaces between words, a pulse beneath everything. The same frequency that followed you from the ice, through deserts, temples, and forgotten seas. You've come full circle. The world feels smaller now, not in distance, but in time. The messages from Antarctica stopped 3 days ago. The last transmission was a single frame of video, a camera shaking in dim light, then a flash, not explosion, but illumination. A blue-white glow expanding from the ice, like dawn breaking underwater. And then the feed went dead. No one has been able to re-establish contact. Satellite imagery shows nothing unusual. No melt, no fissure, no wreckage, just more ice, smooth, silent, untouched. But you know better. You've felt the pulse inside you too many times to dismiss it. It's no longer just beneath the earth. It's within it, within us. You travel one last time, not to a ruin or a site, but to the only place left untouched by modern light, the Atacama Desert. It's dry as bone, ancient as thought. At night, the sky there reveals more stars than anywhere else on Earth. If the heavens have a memory, this is where they keep it. You arrive at dusk. The air is thin and red, the horizon sharp as a blade. Around you lie thousands of geoglyphs etched into the desert floor, spirals, animals, lines that stretch for miles. Some point toward the solstices, others toward the stars. But one, a vast spiral kilometers wide, faces due south, toward Antarctica. You climb a ridge overlooking it as twilight falls. The heat fades. The wind rises. From here, the spiral looks like the others you've seen. Göbekli Tepe, the Sahara, the ice. The same pattern, repeating across epochs. It's as if the Earth has been trying to tell one story in one language since the beginning. Circles, stars, and sound. You switch on your recorder and play the Antarctic audio file again. The hum merges with the wind, resonating through the sand until you feel it in your bones. And then impossibly, the ground responds. The sand trembles, not violently, but rhythmically. A vibration passes through the desert, subtle yet undeniable, as though the land recognizes the frequency. Dust lifts from the spiral below, forming faint waves that ripple outward. You freeze, The signal that began beneath the ice is being mirrored here, thousands of miles away. Every ancient site, every buried temple, drowned city, stone alignment, sits on what geophysicists call telluric currents, natural electrical pathways that run through the Earth's crust like veins. The ancients called them dragon lines, ley lines, or paths of the gods. You remember something one of the scientists said months ago about the Antarctic readings matching magnetic anomalies found under the Andes and Africa. What if those weren't coincidences? What if those ancient builders knew exactly where the Earth's veins ran and built their monuments to awaken them? The pulse grows stronger. Your chest vibrates with it, your heartbeat sinking until you can't tell which is which. You whisper into the wind, "What are you?" And the desert answers, not in words, but in light. Faint glows shimmer across the spiral's ridges. At first you think it's phosphorescence, a trick of mineral dust, but then the light begins to move, spiraling inward. You take a step back, heart pounding, as the center of the glyph flares, a soft blue radiance, identical to what you saw beneath the ice. The frequency climbs, your recorder overloads, the display flickering into static. You fall to your knees, clutching the sand that now feels alive, vibrating like a great drumhead. The stars above blur and twist, as if drawn into the spiral's motion. And suddenly, you see it. Not a hallucination, an understanding. A pattern so vast, it doesn't fit into thought, only recognition. Every flood, every monument, every myth of gods descending or worlds drowned. They're not separate events, they're pulses in the same cycle, like waves of breath. Civilizations rise when the earth exhales, when the frequency is low and stable. But eventually the planet inhales again, floods, freezes, resets, storing its memory beneath ice, sand, and sea. It's not punishment, it's respiration. The earth doesn't forget, it simply sleeps, dreaming itself into balance. And each time it awakens, it sings its memory through us. We are its echo, conscious matter, remembering for the planet what it cannot speak. Maybe the builders of Göbekli Tepe, of Giza, of Tiwanaku, weren't worshipping the heavens. Maybe they were listening, tuning stone to frequency, mapping resonance into geometry, trying to anchor the world against the next breath of the earth. The hum rises again, louder now. The air itself seems to shimmer. Above you, Orion burns directly overhead. The same 3 stars aligned across every monument, every myth, every horizon. For a moment you understand, the alignments were never just celestial, they were instructions, markers for the next time the Earth remembered. And now it has. You pull out your satellite phone, though there's no signal this far into the desert. The battery glows faintly. On the screen, static forms patterns, 3 dots and a spiral. The same signature, the same message. It isn't calling from beneath the ice anymore. It's everywhere, carried through the planet's magnetic field, through circuits, through us. The hum deepens into something like speech, though not in any language you know. Still, you understand it, not in words, but in feeling. We never left, you were never alone. The stars flicker. No, they move subtly, impossibly, as if rearranging themselves. Orion shifts, one star dimming, another flaring, forming a shape like an eye. A great watching eye across the sky. You fall backward onto the sand. The wind stops. The world holds its breath. And then, silence. The spiral's light fades. The vibration ends. The desert stills. You lie there, heart pounding, staring at the stars. Everything looks the same, yet you know it isn't. The hum hasn't stopped. It's simply moved, deeper, quieter, inside. You reach into your pocket and pull out the recorder. It's dead, its battery drained. but the metal is warm, pulsing faintly. You raise it to your ear. There's no sound, only rhythm. Your rhythm, the Earth's rhythm. The stars above remain fixed, but something in their arrangement feels different now, as though a message has been sent, a signal answered. Maybe this is what the ancients feared when they buried their temples, when they mapped their warnings in stone. The pulse always returns. The Earth always remembers, and this time humanity is awake enough to hear it. A low rumble travels through the ground, distant but rising. Not quake, not storm, something older, broader, more deliberate. You whisper into the night, voice trembling. Is it starting again? No answer. But the sand at your feet begins to move, slowly, circularly, spiraling inward. And from somewhere far away, perhaps from beneath the ice, or beneath the sea, or beneath the mind itself, the hum returns. Not faint, not distant, alive. You close your eyes, listening. And the last thought before darkness claims you is not fear, but recognition. Because deep down, every heartbeat you've ever felt was the same message, repeated since the beginning. The Earth never forgets. And now, neither do we. In this video, we traveled through deserts, oceans, ice, and memory, uncovering the whispers of worlds long forgotten. From the buried pillars of Göbekli Tepe to the drowned monuments beneath the sea, from the Sphinx's rain-scarred flanks to the silent domes under Antarctic ice, every fragment carried the same echo that human history is not a straight line, but a cycle of awakening and forgetting. Across continents, the same geometry, the same stars, the same hum, united civilizations separated by oceans and ages, suggesting that what we call beginnings are really recoveries, that the Earth itself may dream, breathe, and remember through us. If this journey through the forgotten chapters of our past resonated with you, we'd love to hear your thoughts. What ancient mystery, vanished culture, or strange moment in time would you like us to explore next? Your curiosity shapes the stories we tell, the lost empires we revisit, the hidden symbols we decode, the silences we turn into sound. If you haven't already, take a moment to like this episode, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next candlelit descent into history's shadows. It's a small gesture, but it helps this community of seekers grow, a gathering of listeners who believe, as we do, that history still has secrets left to share. Share your thoughts below. Tell us what world you'd like to reopen, or what mystery you want to dream through next. Until then, sleep gently, stay curious, and remember, every night, somewhere beneath our feet, the past is still breathing.